CWD Music Reviews here. I'm CWD and this is going to be a music review of the new Boris with Merzbow album, Gensho. Boris is a metal band, experimental rock band that's been around for quite a few many decades, and Merzbow is a prolific noise pioneer that's been around for much longer. I've been a casual appreciator of both. Boris I'm a bit more familiar with. I'm a big fan of their release back in the 2000s called Akuma no Uda. I was mostly drawn to that album because the cover is reminding me of Nick Drake's Brighter Lighter, except instead of just, an acoustic guitar, it's like a bass guitar with like two different necks. But Merzbow, I've only recently been catching ear of his exploits when he collaborated with Full of Hell back in 2014, which was intense. And he also collaborated with Jim O'Rourke and about two other Japanese artists for this 70-minute long avant-garde jazz piece called Flying Basket. So now we have a new collaborative project from both these acts, Boris and Merzbow. I believe this is actually their third collaborative effort. Drone Evil actually introduced this idea of like a double album where both discs are played at the same time. This album in particular, Gensho, really continuing that idea, that concept, but I think this one seems a bit more fleshed out and maybe better. Like I said, this album consists of two discs, both just separate albums entirely. You got the Boris side, which is about 9 tracks long, about 74 minutes. And then you have the Merzbow side, which is 4 tracks long and about 74 minutes. It'll take me a minute for me to get into what these two sound like together, because when you're talking about these albums, you're pretty much talking about 3 different albums. The Boris album, the Merzbow album, and the Borsbow album. Now, to get with the Boris album, there's not really much of anything new here. 8 or 9 of these tracks come from previous material. The self-titled Akuma no Uda song is on here. It's a different re-recorded version. All of these are re-recorded. Then you got songs from Pink, Amplifier, a couple of splits, I believe. It's certainly interesting that they're recovering older material and re-recording it for a specific sound. So, how does that go? Particularly well, I believe. The opening track, Farewell, comes from Pink. You essentially get this slow intro that comes off as soft before these heavy drone riffage comes in. That's quite beautiful. Especially when the vocals come in and add a lot of personality and really somberness to this song. It's about 7 minutes in length, but it doesn't feel that way. Like, every time I listen to this song, and numerous songs here, by the time I feel like I've listened to about 2 minutes of the song, I look at my iPod and it actually turns out that I've only listened to 5 minutes. There's also a really cool guitar solo on the back end of this track. It's not like super technical or anything, but it really guides the track out well. And then you get the song Huge, where they start bringing in their doom metal influence. You got the drone metal aspect, but it brings in this doom sound that I really enjoy a lot. This stuff rivals what bands like Sun are doing. It's like 10 minutes of just dark, doomish drone metal. The intro actually comes off as like noisy and industrial. I don't know if that was provided by Merzbow or if the band conjured up their own noise, but still. Then we get to Resonance, my least favorite track on the album. It just sounds like what the title says. It's just sound resonance, cymbals and drums going on. It's okay for what it is. And then we get the track Rainbow, where we get a more soft track. It sidesteps from the drone metal aspect a little, but still it's definitely an enjoyable track. It certainly adds variety to what would have been just straight drone metal for 74 minutes. I love the sleigh bells that come in the background. This nice, warm, and really easygoing bass part. We get some vocals from the female member that add variety to this track. But then all of a sudden we get this guitar solo that just comes in and is outright chaotic. It was certainly an interesting detour from what could have been just a straightforward, softer sound. We get this cover of the My Bloody Valentine song, Sometimes. This is actually pretty much the chopped and screwed version. Like, it's expanding to like almost 10 minutes long. Percussion is gone. It's like slowed down a lot. They pretty much transformed this into like a drone metal song instead of just a shoegaze track. It's not a favorite of mine on the album, but I'm right for that. And then we get Heavy Rain, which has a noise intro and an outro. And in the middle you have like this soft, loud dynamic go on. Drone metal comes up in the chorus and it's just really breathtaking. And then you get probably my favorite track on the album, close to it anyway, Akuma no Uta. If the original version wasn't droney, heavy enough, and dense enough for you, this one will be. It certainly builds particularly well. It certainly adds a lot of character to this album as a whole. I think that's partially because Akuma no Uta is my favorite Boris album. Then we get the track Akarame Flower, another droney track, but it certainly is juxtaposed by these more cleaner vocals. I can't say it's like one of my top favorites, especially given this bubbly intro. I'm not sure what it was adding to the track as a whole. I certainly like the lead guitar on this track. And then the closing track, Vomitself. Really great way, really sinister and really dark way to just end this. The vocals get more vicious when the moment they pop up and after drifting off, and then gives you just outright 9 minutes of just vicious doom metal that I enjoy a lot. Really nice way to close this disc out. But what about the Merzbow side? I enjoy this one as well. It's not like my favorite disc, but this certainly is a trip to listen through. Like I said, it's 4 tracks long, so 74 minutes. The shortest track being about 15 minutes and the longest being 20. You get pretty much what Merzbow has been known for doing for the past few decades. Some really intricate, dense, harsh noise compositions. The first of which being my favorite, Planet of the Cows. I don't know how to describe what he's doing with like this one thing of noise. It's like all sorts of different noise patterns all at once, but still having some kind of characterization amongst all of these. To allude to the title of this track, Planet of the Cows, it reminds me of like if every cow in the universe was trying to transmit this encrypted message into space that man is committing genocide and torture on their people and they want someone to come save them. And this goes on for about 16 minutes and it just slowly dies down as each cow is being fed into, I guess, this futuristic meat grinder. That's an interpretation I came up with. I look up part 1 and part 2. Part 1 is the longest track on the album, it's about 20 minutes. You get like, again, really intense and really engaging, harsh noise from beginning to end. What's also interesting is there's like this MIDI percussion, or I think it's MIDI, going on that eventually just gets drowned out in the noise, and I guess that's like one complaint about it, but still it was certainly a good adage. And then part 2 starts off really mechanical, I guess, before the mechanics just malfunction and noise just sputters all over. There's like some really interesting, I guess, guitar distortion on this track, or at least I can interpret this as guitar distortion. Either this one or part 1 is my least favorite track. And then you get the closing track, Prelude to a Broken Arm. It sounds like what it is. I guess kind of a foreshadowing of an arm that's about to be broken. Like, I guess the arm is having like some kind of lucid nightmare about getting broken in the future, and this is like the soundtrack for that. It certainly starts off kind of soft before it eventually goes off in this really noisy and loud and chaotic direction. Or at least that's how I'm reading into it anyway. So that's both discs. I mean, they're not particularly anything new or boundary pushing or anything of that nature. Certainly Merzbow could have thrown in a bit more variety amongst these 4 tracks instead of just giving us harsh noise that I guess we've known him for quite some time. And Boris really could have came up with new compositions, but I guess the saving grace for the Boris is the fact that these older compositions still sound fresh and new, the way they've been re-recorded for this particular album. So, how do these two sound together? I think the first question I need to answer is, how the hell did I figure this out? First I downloaded the album from Bandcamp. You can either download it or just buy a CD that includes a download, or get the LP and includes a download. Either way you find it on Bandcamp, you'll be getting a download for it. I put that download onto my iTunes library. Then I grabbed my iPad, went to Apple Music, and on the iPad I played the Merzbow side. And on the computer, I played the Boris side. I had to turn the Merzbow side a little low because it's noise, and I had to crank the Boris side a little bit higher since it needs to be like evened out in this way. And what I heard was goddamn incredible. The first 2 tracks of the first disc align perfectly with the first track of the second disc. Tracks 3 through 5 align perfectly well with track 2 of the second disc. 6 and 7 of the first disc really aligns well with the third track of the second disc, and yeah, the last 2 tracks of the first disc align well with the last track of the second disc. Just phenomenally well, and I guess that's why they named it Gensho, which is Japanese for phenomenon. It's like they finally figured out how to do this kind of formula, because when they come together, it adds so much to these tracks. Just an obscene amount of flavor. The Boris disc adds a lot of personality and rhythm, which is funny because it's the drone metal album, to the Merzbow side. And the Merzbow side adds a lot of texture and even some percussion aspects to the Boris side. They come together so seamlessly well. 2 completely different discs marrying into something that's quite remarkable. It's the same production, it's the same tone, key, and everything. It's fantastic. I will say though, when they come together, I guess the Boris side can overcome the Merzbow side at times. And the Merzbow side likes to, I guess, kind of decrescendo to accommodate for the Boris side. Whereas when the Boris side has like softer moments, like on the track Rainbow, the Merzbow side gets maybe a little too chaotic for its own good. But it's quite damn fine. If you're into like really experimental stuff, if you're already into like drone metal or harsh noise, and you wanted to see what these 2 different pioneers of each sound are coming up with, then definitely do check this out. I will say though that both discs separately, while solid, they just feel maybe too standard, and it might be kind of daunting to just visit one or the other instead of both at the same time if at some point you're able to visit both discs at the same time. But regardless, this is definitely worth checking out, so give it a try. This album is a plus 2.4 out of plus 3. Separately, I feel like I only want to go back to the Boris side. Merzbow side, while good, it's more so trying to add a lot of texture for the Boris side. What I think is really great about this album is how they really work together to make this experiment work, and I certainly think it does with flying colors. But if you've given this album a listen, what did you think of it? Did you like this album? Did you dislike this album? What was your reasoning for that, and what should I consider listening to and reviewing next? The CW Music Reviews here, signing off.